What's up, everyone? Good evening. It's almost 8 p.m. Eastern. Testing out this new mic setup tonight. Let me know if you can hear me a little bit more clearly than last time with less breathing. Got a party next door, so I'm just going to talk a little bit, say what's up and welcome to everybody, and we're going to jam some tunes to start off. Got some Saturn and Jupiter setting here. So we're going to start with Saturn, shift over to Jupes, and then we'll hit the moon. Give me a shout in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling tonight, and let me know if you can hear and see everything all right. Remember that 4K. All right. Made up of shells, I am the stone, cause of the love, you are my life. Made up of shells, magnetic light, claws of the force, gracefully through. for a sec. You can probably hear the background, but just want to welcome everybody joining. Fantasy, Victor, Mary, Miguel. Moved over here to Jupiter for a second, and it's setting pretty hard behind the trees, so the visibility is not great. But we'll chill here for a little bit, back to Saturn, then the moon. The moon's looking amazing and pretty high up there in the sky, so it's got some formidable opponent here, playing some tracks from Call in My Mind album. 8 o'clock here, starting a long show tonight. Get your questions ready for Electric Universe stuff if you want to ask me things. I'm going to do some sketching and some hexagonal crater talk tonight, and talk a little bit about YouTube conspiracy stuff and how just strange it is sometimes. what does it all mean? Is it all just one bad dream? I'm trying to forget, locking my lips to break them apart. You're down into orbit, sparkling tricks to sweet spots. Dying to forget, eyes of the world, just let it go cold. Stuck in this orbit, sinking the coiling, darling, just break my heart anymore. I can't take it. Never leave it after. I can't take it. Where does this feeling come from? Where do I get the right to ask such outrageous questions? Where does this feeling get me? How do I know it's right to ask such crazy questions? Where will this feeling get me? Oh, where will this feeling get me? Now I know I have the right to ask those outrageous questions. But I'm trying to forget, locking those lips to break them apart. I'm trying to orbit, sparkling tricks to sweet spot. Dying to forget, eyes of the world, just let it go. Stuck in this orbit, sinking the coiling, darling, just break my heart anymore. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome. All right, where is that one? Let's do this one instead. All right, 8:15 on the clock, just over here at Saturn before it sets. I got a loud party next door, so forgive the background noise. Just drawing a little bit of the Birkeland current, or filament, or magnetic ropes, whatever your preference. These are how planets are grown and stars are grown along these electric currents that go through space along magnetic field lines. It's a little hard to focus, so I'm just gonna sketch a little bit more until this party is over and then start the party up here. But just want to say what's up to everybody hopping in. I see Charlie Silverman, I see Carolina Sky Astronomy, Debbie Carson, Michael Stiller, Fantasy Ecstasy, Genghis Khan, Cincy Camillo, and if I missed you, let me know in the chat. I really want to talk about some Electric Universe stuff tonight. I wasn't really talking about like crazy conspiracies, but more so I saw Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille respond to a channel that should not be named, and I felt like so bad for him that he had to respond to that. But otherwise, nothing's really happening in space except for here, because Of course, the powers that be don't want to move space forward. And yeah, get some questions ready for Electric Universe stuff. Like, ask me about consciousness or any thoughts on last show. I feel like I talk a lot, but I don't get too many questions, so let me know. What up there, Justin T? And yeah, just want to say a shout out to Tess as well. Sent me a nice comment, and I'll talk a little bit about December 21st and the conjunction. There's a little bit of buffering going on right now, so bear with me. Going for a little while tonight. So I closed the door a little bit. I think it's a bit better, but so I can talk to y'all, and let me know if it's just too loud in the background, or forgive me if I can't focus for a moment. But let's get in here to some chatting. Over here at the moon, Saturn and Jupiter have already set. 8:25 p.m. East Coast, edge of space. Thanks everybody for hanging out on another TBS stream. That was a little bit of catch for all my favorites in the chat. You know who you are. Any lurkers, hope you're feeling good too. So yeah, really what happened. I kind of been wanting to chat about some more plasma stuff after last conversation. I feel like people were starting to get it. And in a way, like disseminating information is like plasma layers. So one layer, you know, you kind of introduce the concept, and then people respond to it, and then after a while, it kind of settles into these cymatic patterns. And then you'll hear it a couple of times, maybe a month after that, and then it'll kind of conform to a new system that's a little bit more intricate, a little more fractalized. And so this is a good point. I mean, I've been talking about Electric Universe since 2017. It's finally gotten to a place where you kind of see these videos and you see comments from people who get it. And by it, I mean the electricity of consciousness, the electricity of matter, the real fundamental state of interconnectivity between all things at all sizes. And getting to a place where seeing documentaries and science shows that only talk about space from a disconnected and orphaned state don't feel right anymore, don't feel correct. So so I'm sitting indoors right at the edge of my porch, so I can kind of keep the door semi-ajar, which is not too bad. I got some coffee here. I'm hyped on some information that I want to share with y'all. The shape of the craters on the moon, I think, is a really big deal. I've talked about it a number of times, and what I'd like to do is see if anybody in the chat wants to spur a conversation about craters on the moon, then I can kind of take it from there. I see some questions already. And forgive me kind of if I get like out of breath. It's sort of the way I get excited about ideas. What's going on, San Diego? Arizona here, Lake Havasu. Havasu. So the Rastaman lives, I think I had a question before that. So Genghis Khan, what's happening? Dr. Ayad Hassan Kamel, what's going on? Super must see, and anybody else I missed, let me know if you want to shout out. So so what's my take on all this? There are a lot of different aspects of it, but let's start off. Genghis Khan says, so TBS, what's your view on universe or universal consciousness? Do we humans affect it? So I think Charlie Silverman said, we are it, scalar. That makes a lot of sense to me as well. I feel like I've mentioned before, the patterns on your hand look like the surface of the moon. These dendritic Lichtenberg figures. I looked it up today before the show. If you type in, why do our hands have creases or lines on your hand, you'll see that the official narrative or the official explanation is almost, it's just naming the phenomenon. You know, it's not or the phenomenon, yeah. It's naming the phenomenon. It's not exactly answering why those lines actually occur. And I think the big deal with Electric Universe understanding is that it gives you geometry by which to interpret everything around you. So these shapes that I've been drawing, and I drew one just earlier over the planets, but you'll see it's this, you've probably seen it in a ton of New Age work. You've seen it in Thrive. You've seen it in the Primer fields, the Laplacian Primer fields. You've also seen this in Theoria Apophysis' work, Ken Wheeler's work. Just taking off my jacket here. Ooh, it gets hot so quick. But yeah, this shape is truly, and actually Nassim Haramein as well is doing this Arc Crystal company that is producing crystals that resonate, and they understand this geometry. So further than that, you have Eileen McCusick, who talks about the human biofield. You have Rupert Sheldrake, who talks about the morphogenetic field or the morphogenic field. You also have what I've discovered for myself is the fact that it's purely optical and interpretable by any person. It's not really this esoteric mystical knowledge, although one could say it's that, considering what's popular right now. I'm going to try and take my time with each question so I don't feel rushed, but I will say hi to everybody popping in. What's up, Gabriel? Yonatan Noam? What's up, Israel? Shout outs. Yeah, hex is everywhere, San Diego. I mean, well, I didn't want to write hexagons because there are features that are pentagonal and an octagonal even. So it's really it's basically circles that turn into lesser sided objects. I mean, of course, if a circle, if you start removing vertices or sides to it, it will start having little lines that make the circle. Really, if you've ever used a software program or a 3D program, you'll know that this principle of reducing vertices, and then you have a rougher and rougher circle. Now, circular implies like that it looks a bit that it looks like a circle, but I think really it's very important because we have a narrative that says the moon's craters are circular, and people have this idea that most of them, if not all of them, are a perfect circle to some degree, or ellipses, so stretched circles. What I argue is that actually, no, they're actually very simple geometry, like hexagons, like honeycomb, right? Like molecules. And the way I show that is dumb simple. You know, there are a lot of theories, there's a lot of math, but ultimately you can see it right here. This is Mare Crisium. Mare Crisium is truly a hexagon. I mean, right? Let me know in the chat if you agree or disagree, but I feel like my eyes don't fail me anymore when I see this. And then you have Proclus right next to it that creates a very, very perfectly mathematical astrid shape with even like the inside of a peace sign. And then you have this hexagon. I know I went off track a little bit on universal consciousness, but I'll get back to that. Because this is universal consciousness. The reason these craters form the way they do is because of this geometric shape. So on one side of it, it looks like half a torus or a donut, and in the center of it, you have an hourglass shape or a pinched hypertrochoid, which is, think of a cylinder being pinched at the center. Once it's pinched, it creates an inertial plane, and then you have all the stuff around it is really like the words to a page. It's all this dark matter, dark energy, impinging upon an inertial plane that creates the matter that vibrates at a resonance that the human eye sympathetically resounds to. So how does this relate to everything else? Is that I started noticing that like there's a glaring issue with how the moon's craters and moon's mares and almost all the features on the moon were not only hexagonal and pentagonal and octagonal, but also interrelated and completely, you can put this shape on top of any sized version of this. Like, right, this was Mare Crisium. Let me just take a little drink. What's up, Dismantle Harp? What's up, Esoteric Gold? Nice to see you. Yeah, so cursor is a little bit finicky tonight, but anyway, Mare Crisium, right? And then to the left of Mare Crisium is Sea of Tranquility, Mare Tranquillitatis, and you'll see it's a little bit tougher because erosion, I think, is withering or diffusion of plasma layers. So everything is layered and layered and layered and layered, and after a while, the diffuseness of the layers becomes apparent and it's a gradation fall off. So this is what erosion, I think, is. Actually, let me get back to talking a little bit, and I'll move properly. So let's see. So universal consciousness, right? So humans can be drawn at the center of this shape as well. So right here, if you follow these lines, I'm drawing it one more time, but if you follow these lines, you'll see this is the bridge of a nose. And then you have the two nostrils, right? Right here, you'll have the two eyeballs. It's not just humans, it's every creature, right? This is where the symmetry comes from. Why? Because it's along a Birkeland filament. The Birkeland filament is coaxial, like Donald Scott's model, and rotates. Counter-rotates, sorry. And this is what creates hexagons at the poles. And it also creates this pinch right here in the center, which I think is a Bennett pinch or a Z pinch. And the Bennett pinch is the source of the oscillation for every point in the universe. So at every size, you have this point. The point sends out a ping, an oscillation, to the previous layer of its existence. So every layer of plasma that exists is encoded with cymatic patterns, like Rupert Sheldrake's cymatic patterns, if you've seen Chladni plates or anything like that. These layers are what is memory and life. Every layer is basically you could look at a layer as a second, right? Or a parsec, or a fractal second. Not a parsec, but a fractalized second, a piece of a second. Or you could call them seconds or minutes or hours, right? It's scalar to some degree. So every layer is memory. So it's stored cymatic resonance within etheric plasma, real plasma, like real matter. You just can't see it with the naked eye all the time. Most of the time it's right out of visible optical range, but we can see it with the Chandra Observatory. We can see it with all sorts of X-ray and UV. There are different layers to this. This is what is implied by the human eye doesn't see the widest range of colors. But what the rest of it is are basically these layers of plasma. So as the layers are closest to the oscillation, they're the densest. When they move out to the very end, they're the most diffuse. Between each layer is a gradation. So when you get to the end of like a major hurdle or goal, it's really difficult. That last 10% is breaking through this layer, moving to the next one. The next one's created, then the oscillation reads the collective memory and creates a new layer. Collective memory, new layer, collective memory, new layer. Till the layers get out to this point. This is your birth, this is your midlife, this is your day-to-day, and this is the self. The self is actualized on every single level, from the tiniest quantum particle to the largest systems that we know of. What we can see are all the little nodes, or what we sympathetically resonate with are all these memories, tension points along these filaments. Yeah. So this is a little bit about like how consciousness is this additive, replicative function. So if I erase this, and you kind of see that, let me just hide this for a moment. And so you'll see at every scale on the moon, you have similar types of chained features that are hexagonal, pentagonal, sharing a boundary layer, sharing a wall. And right in the same frame, you have Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility, Mare Crisium. You've got at the bottom Theophilus, Katharina, and you have Ptolemaeus, and it's chained to the left. There's a whole chain of craters that look just like the Mare, that are much larger than it in one shot. Okay, let me erase all this. I see that the channel is a little bit red, so it might be buffering, but let's give that a moment. Hopping in the chat to say what's up. What's up, Plain Truth? What's up? Anybody else joining? Yeah, so the coaxial Birkeland filament is like a DNA strand that we visualize. Plain Truth says the moon is a mirrored image of Earth. So what's interesting about that is that that's one of those conspiracies that I thought was really interesting when I first started doing the moon, like back in 2015. And I thought, wow, this could be super fascinating if really the moon and Earth kind of met in space and shared electrical giant thunderbolts or electrical filaments from continent to the moon, and therefore some of the features on the moon would look like a mirror of what's on Earth. If you miss any of the information because of the buffering, let me know and I'll repeat it. But anyway, so I looked into this, and you can't really get a sense that it's exactly one-to-one. But I will say that I think the more so the reason we see things in things, or we see things that relate to other things, is because of this geometry. It's a much more holistic, much more broad way of understanding these shapes, seeing faces in what we think are patterns. You know, there's this common misconception of saying, oh, you're just seeing things, or what are those, the Rorschach blots. Just if you make something symmetrical, then all of a sudden it looks like a face. But don't say that out loud, because you could sound crazy. But I think the reason that's the way it's like, the reason we do see faces in patterns, or dogs and clouds, or any number of things like that, or we look at bacteria and it looks like us, is because of this geometry, not because some other conspiracy. Very clean way of explaining it. Let's see. I know it's buffering pretty bad. But I'm going to keep talking and let me know if you miss anything. San Diego says, I always feel like as a people we have been in the dark age, and when the historians speak of a dark age in the past, was in fact our golden age. I think that's just crazy. I'll give this a second to catch up. Strange and like going down to 0 kbps, which is odd, but now it's green again. Okay, cool. Thanks for your patience, everybody. So that was a little bit about how the human consciousness exists, resonating. What I was going to talk about is a little bit about how birth happens and how this oscillation starts from a nodal point. Same way like a bubble is formed when you do pour over coffee or create tainted water in a sink with soap. The emergence of a bubble is akin to a life cycle. And so when the bubble is formed, let me just sketch this as well. Hope you're all feeling well tonight. Welcome to everybody. Oh, what's up, Thomas? What's up, Rockstar? What's up, Dendrite? Music is me. And anybody else I missed? I hope you're feeling okay. All right, let me do a new file and yellow marker, because this is something that I picked up from Eileen McCusick, and then I interpreted it visually, which is she talks about how memory is actually outside of the human body, and that we resonate with it. So I think the way birth happens is that there's a point that first starts, and this is what you could call the soul or the initial spark of life or whatever you want, and then it starts to oscillate. Now, oscillation comes from the original vibration. The original vibration, I think, is this larger question that everyone sort of is after, like, what is the God principle? Like, what is this original vibration? And I don't have the answer to that, but I do know that once you get to a place where you understand that the human body is as perfect as the rest of the solar system and as nature and is built in the same form, then you know that, and then you ask the question about who's making my eyes or my arms or my hair. And you realize that it can't be anyone but you. You're making it. You can use all these abstract ideas about nature, or it just happens, or I don't think about it, but ultimately you're growing your hair right now and you don't know how. So people tend to take themselves out of this equation when they think about it. I mean, I used to, for sure, up until even 2 years ago. I didn't grasp that I, in fact, made my whole body. I did, not anyone else, not my parents, not abstract nature, Mother Nature, but I did. When that settles, then you realize that you are in the image of everything else, and therefore everything else is in the image of you. And when you get empowered to that level, then we can get to a place where we can decide, we can start asking, what is this original oscillation? So for me, oscillation happens, and the first oscillation pings with this Z pinch along a Birkeland filament, right? This is the idea, is that we don't exist in isolation. We're grown along branches. This is the physical manifestation of what the Matrix is trying to say. So the Matrix, and the thing is, the movies are encoded because all media is encoded with this geometry. Not because, I think there are conspiracies, but I also think that there's this through line to all art and media because it's made out of this geometry to tell the same story over and over again. So along this Birkeland filament, these nodes are grown, they oscillate. The first oscillation resonates with this center point, and the additive function of this oscillation with this first plasma layer creates the next plasma layer, or rather the next plasma layer. And this plasma layer moves out 1 second or 1 hour or 1 quantum Planck second. And that's what happens. And so this is the beginning of life, and by the end of your oscillation, I'm way off screen here. So first oscillation, first layer of plasma. How's it encoded? It's encoded with cymatic patterns. This is what Rupert Sheldrake talks about. This is what Eileen McCusick talks about. This is what Eric Dollard talks about, Tesla, Ken Wheeler, all of them are referring to this in some way, I think. Oscillation happens, next layer, this is pushed out. So birth ends up at the very end, right? When you're 60 years old, your birth is about 60 feet away from you. Your half-life is 30 years. And this is a visual interpretation of age, right? But it's also a visual interpretation of a real-world thing where a human person has these actual physical plasma layers around them. This is the big difference. And where all memory is stored, all life memory and experience is in cymatic, dense plasma knots. This is why when somebody asks you to remember something, you look up or around or look at the ceiling, or you send a ping from your pineal gland or your chakra system to your plasma layers, and you pull that memory. You start resonating with it, and it starts to articulate. It starts to become informed, and that's how you remember things. Similarly, you block things out. Most life, in fact, is blocking things out, because imagine you could see all light at once, or all stars, or all planets, or all things. It would be too much. So the entire geometric system of life is not, oh, we only use 10% of our brain, or we only see this much, and animals do so much more. In fact, humans are tuned so perfectly so that we only perceive as much as we can actually deal with. Otherwise, it would be overwhelming, and it's never presented publicly like that. It's always presented as a negative, that humans are weak and somehow less capable. But in fact, we're highly capable because of this tuning out of things and tuning in of things. So humans, 7 chakras, right? Crown chakra, unless your head's up your ass. Root chakra. Humans are a longer Birkeland filament that's much larger, right? Every tiny particle of the human being is one of these larger versions. The core of an apple, crater formation, nebula, pulsars, molecules, half-lives, language. All of it actually operates in this one way, this one method. Resonates, creates a new layer. Resonates, creates a new layer. Somebody comes into your sphere of influence. These are the layers that interact and form new layers. Fleeting images of people, when you see them, it's just a little ping on this cymatic pattern. It just resonates it a little bit, and then your memory kind of thinks about it for a second. If you don't work on this, it doesn't become a dense plasma layer, therefore you forget. Hopping in the chat for a second, sorry, because I'm on a deep tangent here about this concept. To me, this makes absolute sense in terms of how memory is formed, how consciousness actually interprets itself by using itself to interpret the next layer. And then the next layer is additive because it takes into account all the previous layers. It's not magical. It is highly magical, magnetic, but it's not this thing that cannot be comprehended. It's actually quite comprehensible. And this is the big conspiracy on YouTube, is that the world is incomprehensible to most people. And that, I think, is total BS, actually. I think many, many will never understand it, but it doesn't make it incomprehensible. All right, let's see what's in the chat room. Jerry McCurry, sound is too low. I'll speak a little bit higher into the mic. Like a tree grows. Yep, esoteric gold. We are plasma knots. Hell yeah. What's up, Cleary? How's it going? Sorry, I was trying to use all the correct things tonight. Let me see how I can turn this mic up a little bit. Testing. Maybe that's a little bit better. I'll speak louder. Sensei Camilla says, I have a silly, serious question. How does a lunar wave fit into the electric universe? Plasma layer, residual plasma? The simple answer there is if you look up bullet physics, ballistics, and take, what is it? Oh man, there's a word for it. There's a type of photography that takes pictures of ballistic waves or breaking the sound barrier. It's like not something like scalar, but it's not. It'll come to me. But there's a way that you take that picture and you'll see that bullets, supersonic jets, missiles, anything that breaks the so-called sound barrier. And the barrier, right, we were just looking at these plasma layers. Sound barrier is just one very dense plasma layer in our ether, in our sky, in our medium, right? And when an airplane or a car or a bullet goes through this layer, it creates a snap, like the shrimp. You know, you constantly see this sonoluminescent thing with not the ninja shrimp, but the shrimp that snap their claws, and it creates a little sonoluminescent cavitation bubble. This is the same thing that happens, I think, when an object, because an object is a vibration, is a set of cymatic vibrations, right? We are, in a way, a set of cymatic vibrations. And as this goes through another layer of plasma, it pops this bubble, and it creates these double layers that actually emanate outwards. So I think all the lunar waves, Jupiter wave and Saturn wave, you can look at the two playlists that I've created. One is with all the waves from other people and this ballistics experiment. And you can also look at the waves that I've filmed here with y'all on the chat and in live. Most of them were live. I think all of them were live, except for one. 4 lunar waves, 2 Jupiter waves, 5 lunar waves even, and 1 Saturn, the only Saturn wave that exists. And I'm proud of that just because I think like I'm the only one saying that it's not like super uninteresting. And I'm also saying it's not a holographic projection moon, right? I'm saying it's a very natural, understandable concept. It looks really weird. It looks crazy, but it actually makes a lot of sense. All right. What's up, Cognition Design? I'm scrolling up. Rainbows and butterflies, what's happening? And yeah, okay. Yeah, Rastaman Liz says, dude, and God said, let there be light, first oscillation, right? So this is an interesting idea. Now, yeah, it does. It really gets to this point, which in an odd way, even though I know that, or I believe personally that the Big Bang cosmology is highly flawed in a lot of ways. This is sort of what they're talking about when they talk about the Big Bang. I think it's the language, the terminology is so obtuse and designed to make people not care or to make people feel small, in which case they won't look it up. But the Big Bang is really, and if you merge that with what happened at the end of quantum mechanics, I mean, even though they haven't publicly announced that that string theory is dead, but I think that string theory, Edward Witten came up with M theory, and the idea is that membranes are these giant kind of like soft pillows of matter, and they hit each other at different points and they create infinite Big Bangs, right? So quantum mechanics references the same concept of plasma layers, and the Big Bang is actually really trying to say this, that this Z-pinch, this original Z-pinch was started to oscillate and created all the matter that we see and expanded. But it's interpreted in such a convoluted way that now we live in this universe that is not connected, right? The stars that you see are dead, long dead. That light travels and takes a long time to get to us, makes the universe completely disconnected at the fundamental level. But really, even though it's a very bold statement to make, I think that we're instantly connected to all these sources immediately, instantaneously. The reason we see stars the way they are, I will explain a whole level of optics in this show tonight, and I've explained it before, but the whole wave function, rarefaction, compression of the wavefront of between each plasma layer is how we actually see things. Therefore, stars and the moon and the planets all come to a focal point on this layer of plasma. That's why everything is in focus all at once. No one has this answer. If you look up why do things come into a certain focal point 13 miles above the Earth, I can't find a single reference to it, but the simple answer is that there's a thin layer of plasma where the light vibrates, the oscillation from space, from these planets, reaches a certain point in our plasma shell, the Earth plasma shell. And that's why when we point a scope to this 13-mile up point, it actually looks like it's one layer of focal point, because all this light is coming to one compression in the wavefront. Charlie Silverman says, the Big Bang always sounded like an orgasm to me. Well, in fact, the whole funny part about the status quo and the powers that be, they use this kind of inane rhetoric to really make you think of everything but what you're trying to think of, which is, they talk about magnetic ropes or campfires on the sun or a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, questions that no one really, your average person, or not average, or just a regular person, I never had those questions, but I never understood what to replace those questions with. Right? So when you hear scientists say a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, scientists are now able to calculate up to a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. No one says the obvious thing right after that. Okay, so what? That's really that's very glib, but it's really true. Like, who cares about that when we have lunar geology, when we have fundamental understanding of so-called magnetic ropes? NASA uses Chandra X-ray Observatory. They can see these nebular clouds connecting all the filaments in space. All the filaments in space are actually mostly visible to us. If you look at M42, that's a perfect case study of seeing not only blue and red diffraction in space and seeing the layers, but also seeing this structure that I've been talking about, this torus hourglass shape. Look, I took it directly from Ken Wheeler and the Primer fields, David Laplace, but also Maxwell, the Maxwell geometry, the number theory that everyone was like, oh my God, this is the 369. This makes, well, the 369 fits within this geometry. It's the reverse tetrahedral structure. These tetrahedrons are like that because of the spiraling and the coaxial filament of the Birkeland currents create this expanding compression rarefaction. It happens upwards and downwards. It happens outwards. Let's see. Mr. Rockfish01 says, what's the max zoom you can get from the CPC 11? So this is actually the Nexstar 8 tonight. I'm on the back porch. With the 11, I can get pretty great shots. If you take a look at my Flickr page, you'll see some of those. If you check out some of the streams that I've highlighted, you'll see the CPC 11 in the corner. You can check it out. Quite good, I would say. For homebrew, 11 is pretty much that kind of range where, like, the next step up is tens of thousands of dollars and a huge backyard. 14-inch scope and 17 and 20-inch scopes are really unmanageable for a single person. And I don't have a team, I don't have a yard, and I certainly don't have $10,000, but the 11 for me has been the pinnacle, and being able to do it from like my porch, and also using a 3x Barlow and a really good camera, you can get astounding shots of the moon. I could just say they're great, but certainly go check out some of the archives if you want to see it close up. Let's see. No. This is really cool. Thank you. All right, let's play a couple of tunes. I'm going to get a drink. Stream is green right now. And what should I do? I'm going to probably start zooming in. Let's do a tour from north to south. Everything's looking sharp tonight. Thanks so much, and definitely share your thoughts on what I've been talking about. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm happy to repeat any one of them, any one of the pieces. And I think in my talking about it, you can probably tell that I find this to be the really fundamental piece of the equation, because I can use this one geometry, this one understanding of the oscillation between the plasma Bennett pinch, the Z pinch, and the ether around it in a relational pattern, like the words to a page or a nucleus to an atom, if you want to visualize it. And this is how things exist in relation to one another, matter to antimatter, or dark matter. It's not an unknown thing. It's a necessary, fundamental, mostly visible thing if you use the correct instruments. And the real conspiracy, again, is the fact that they talk about everything but this thing. Even getting Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille to respond to that stupid channel is one of those things that's distracting people from not engaging what I'm talking about, which is actually just looking at the moon, getting a fundamental understanding of your own existence, your place in it, and not paying attention to channels that try and so-called debunk what is highly logical, right, and protect something that is highly illogical. The fight there and the whole debunking thing is really more about, look over here, look at the shiny thing. It's not about the actual knowledge or the debunking or any of that stuff. It's actually just about distracting people from truly just looking at what is very simple once you get it, and just practicing living in that space of, yes, I make my body. Yes, I'm connected to all the stars. Memories outside my body. I store all information there. There's no Akashic record that was made by aliens. It is something that I make. Space is part of me. These are narratives that not only require enlightenment and instant understanding, not require, but can instantly be heard and understood. They require practice in order to actually start living in that field where you do understand that there is potential energy to do all these things, yet there is definite structure to the universe that is known to us and is not unknown, but is known. And finally, like a really big point on these channels that try and debunk or try and explain science to people, it's very simple. Large channels, popular channels, just because they're popular does not make them right or good. There are many, many things that are popular that are terrible. There are things that are popular that are actually very, very bad. So popularity and millions of subscribers, and it also doesn't preclude that. Now, there are great channels that do have millions of views that are worthwhile. So it's not one or the other, but it definitely doesn't necessitate intelligence. It doesn't imply intelligence or correctness if you have 20 million followers. It just doesn't. And if people believe that, that's their thing. But for me, it's 100% true, because go to any city, the coolest restaurant is the one most people don't know about. The best album is the one that most people have never heard of. The best relationship is the one person that you find, or the two people that you find, and not everyone else. So the real specialness of reality is always the lesser, not the popular. The popular, though, needs to exist in order for you to experience the so-called unpopular, or this specificity. So it's highly important to not toss out and say everybody's dumb. Everybody's important, but not everybody is correct. And maybe they are correct for you. But for me, in terms of public science, YouTube science, specifically the understanding of cosmology, to me is much more about practicing what has already been solved and augmenting that, versus saying, do we know if space is electric? Is it electric? Are spirals part of... There's all this rhetoric around never deciding, never making a jump. But in technology, in all forms of life, things make decisions and move on. So think about how ridiculous even debunking anything is when there's so much to learn and to actually change. Spending time talking about these things, attacking people's personalities, when right in front of you on the moon you have back-to-back hexagons that look like a butterfly, that show this shape of the conjugate geometry that Ken Wheeler talks about, that Rupert Sheldrake talks about. You name it. Do I have a website or contact email? Yep, in the description, TakeBackSpace at gmail.com. And forgive me if I'm delayed when I respond, because I get a lot of emails, and a lot of actually fairly complicated emails. So thanks, and that's where you can reach me. All right, little break time here. No mysterious flybys tonight, but maybe. All right, 9:12 on the clock. Coming in here, first half good. We got some Dreamfield. I love this song. This is a new one from 2020. Wrote it through the lockdown, even though we're sort of still locked down. But I appreciate all the kind words on the music. And yeah, when I come back in a few minutes, please leave me some new questions or some thoughts on what I've talked about. Try and speak a little bit louder. I don't know why, but this is the max I can get the mic right now. Nothing more I can do. I mean, I can try and get a little bit. That's max for me. So forgive me if it's low. Thanks for the words about the music. Let me get in the description, actually, you can find it. It's TakeBackSpace.bandcamp. It doesn't have all the music, but it definitely has a lot. Man, they are so loud, so loud. All right, getting my Bandcamp up here. Let me link that to y'all. Yeah, so check the description as well. I have music on Spotify, on iTunes, Amazon. They're albums from a couple of years back, but But yeah, if you want to hear the new stuff, just tune in and check out recent shows. I play a lot of the new stuff just for everybody who shows up. I know I missed somebody. Somebody was talking about entertainmentalist. Horizontal water is logic. I saw that. I wonder, I guess that's a flat earth comment, but I'll give you one nugget on flat earth, which is try and use flat earth to figure out something in the world versus just saying that everything in the world is wrong or incorrect, right? Flat earth is a great way to say things are wrong, but it's actually not a great way to solve new problems. Think about the geometry of it. It completely doesn't jive with what we see in reality. I mean, being on a giant sphere creates the illusion of having a horizontal ocean. It's been shown countless times. Dwayne Kellum channel has put up amazing videos of high-flying balloons that show all of that. But more so, the point is, flat Earth is a concept that actually is just a complete negation tactic. It never really explains anything in place of what it's negating. Whereas Electric Universe allows you to say, okay, NASA's kind of full of shit about magnetic ropes or dirty snowball comets, but here's how to explain these phenomena. So it's a really different thing, even though a lot of channels have used Flat Earth to debunk or to talk shit about Electric Universe. And I'll say it out loud, not TakeBackSpace, but Electric Universe, the Thunderbolts Project, is not 100% correct about everything. I don't think they're the be-all, end-all. But certainly when it comes to the fundamentals of how things are connected and how things operate, it's so clear that this is how it works. And many great scientists, people of all decades of the last 100 years or probably more, have understood this. So conspiracies are fun. It's good to negate things, good to question things. But ultimately, if you try and use flat Earth like the Matrix glasses or the They Live glasses, you're really not doing much, right? Roddy Piper goes at the end and kicks freaking has to physically do something, right? He doesn't just say things are wrong. So in a weird way, all these, even the Truman Show, right? After he gets out, he still has to live, right? He's probably traumatized. It's the trauma show right after the Truman Show. All right, that was stupid. But you know what I'm saying? Everyone thinks, oh, he's outside of the bubble, outside of the dome. But outside of the dome, there's so much shit to deal with, right? So Truman doesn't escape. All the people in the Truman Dome are also prisoners. Even the people who run the Truman Show are tied to this thing that they can never get away from. So there is no outside. And that's why when I was saying that the human body is in this shape, you make your own eyes, you make your own body, you are in the shape of the craters, in the shape of the roots, in the shape of the solar system. It is meant to imply that there is no greater power than the self. The self is the greater power. And what we choose to do all day long is to pretend that we're not that. But if you just simply look at your legs and the hair on your head, from second to second, you realize that you, no one else, is actually making it. You're growing it. You don't know how you do it, but you're also killing your own body, right? You're rotting away, and you're also generating plasma layers. You don't know how you do it, but you're doing it. There's no denying this. So fundamentally, we're in the shape of this plasma, and that's where I come from. There's no point to talk about anything else if that's so fundamentally right in your face. Yeah, I have the volume stuff Jerry McCurry maxed out on all the devices. It's just because I'm using this Focusrite sound card on the PC with the SM37 mic, and for some reason with the pop shield everything is just a touch low, and that's how it is, so sorry about that. Mary says, what are my views on CERN and Electric Universe? So CERN, the one real takeaway is that if you see the plates that CERN talks about when it talks about what it does, these plates look like these magnetic field lines. They look like when things smash together, because our universe is structurally so, all the particles, the Higgs boson, the strong force, the weak force, not the strong force, the reverse muon, the gluons, all the tiny, like there are 21 or so quantum particles that or more that scientists at CERN and before that at Fermi Labs took echo imaging of. So basically at a very tiny point in time, they took a snapshot of hydrogen atoms colliding, or really hydrogen protons colliding. What does this even mean, right? Can they really isolate a single proton and see it and know what it's doing? No, they're zapping a ton of hydrogen in a certain way through this magnetic tunnel, a magnetic levitation tunnel that speeds things up to near the speed of light. Also, near the speed of light is one of those hokey ad hom, just super hokey kind of purple prose that Donald Scott. Is it Donald Scott? Yeah, Donald Scott says purple prose. I love it. It's this bullshit language that makes you think everything but the thing it is. So, love talking shit about quantum mechanics people. But like, I followed this for so many years. It's so obvious that they either have the answer right in front of them and they understand it, or they're spending money on looking for the wrong thing. This is where science is at in most capacities right now, except in the dark circles of certain places where I'm sure that I'm not the only person that understands what I'm saying to you. Anyway, so CERN creates these images. These images look like these magnetic field lines. The conjugate geometry of the universe, essentially tori and hyperboloids or hypertrochoids or pinched tubes. And it's because things are along branches, regardless of whether you zip them around Switzerland and France at 1 trillion miles an hour, they're still fundamentally this geometry. So yes, it's amazing, but like, what more are they going to find beyond looking at bubbles in a sink and then looking at human species from space? And you'll see the interconnectivity immediately. Oh my God. I've been waiting on the street for days. Don't treat me like a fool. I've been sleeping on the streets for days. Don't treat me so cruel. I've been waiting on the porch for days. Don't treat me like you're cool. I've been waiting on the sea for years. I've been waiting for the secret all along. And you know what brings it? Don't you know what soul can sing? Singing about this dream so long for you. I've been dreaming about the song. So long for you. I've been singing about the song. So long for you. I've been dreaming about the one with you. I've been singing about this dream. So long for you. Till I see the color of your eyes reflected in the picture I made for you. We gotta go. It's so what All right, all right. I'm going to just get rid of this pop shield for a second, so maybe it'll pop or you'll hear my breathing, but maybe it'll be louder. We'll see. Not sure what the deal is. I probably need to like run this through Ableton or something, but I don't have it set tonight. I'm just going to speak close to the mic and hopefully it'll be all right for y'all. Let me know if this is better. I'll just be close to y'all. Music has been so good. Thank you. I'm so happy to share that with everyone. That's all some new stuff. That was Electric Blood. 33 watching, Illuminati confirmed. The Rastaman Lives says if we or if something are an imager of God, yes, we are the images and shape of the original oscillation. Yeah, but it still means we are that shape, right? So there's this kind of slightly nuanced language where it goes from you know, we are in the image of God to that being the way we actually make our bodies, right? So it's more of a superpower than kind of like an origin story. Does that make sense? Like everyone's looking for like the Nephilim or reptilian hybrids or some missing link or the apes, right? To try to figure out where mankind's from. But the real hereditary line is this Birkeland filament structure, right? The structure is the geometry, and this is really what the fundamental shape of all things is, not just people and animals and plants, but Earth and solar systems and particles. All down to the tiniest bit looks the same way. Yeah, I got some super duper sharp moon right here. Mare Crisium on the far right, next to it Tranquillitatis, underneath that Fecunditatis, with Langrenus crater right in the middle there. You can kind of see it again, the same shape occurs. Let's draw a little bit. I'm also losing my voice because I'm being pretty loud, so let's make this show one for the ages right here. Keep those questions coming, and let me pull us up a new sketch pad right here. I want to talk about how like any part of the moon or any planet, Mars, Mercury, Venus, any star, any picture from Hubble, anything at all. I mean, obviously all things are in this shape, but anything space related, you can superimpose this geometry upon, and at some point you'll figure out and how it actually all fits together. All right, so see if my sketching is coming up. There we go. So Langrenus, right, comes in. It has a couple of different like broken up parts here, so it's not as obvious, right? It's not super obvious. It's kind of diffuse going down. Sorry, Fecunditatis, Mare Fecunditatis. But Langrenus crater right here, you can definitely see strong line, sharp angle, sharp angle, sharp angle, sharp angle, sharp angle, right? Up to the top right, Mare Crisium, sharp angles all the way through. Why isn't this talked about? This is the main thing. Like, people talk about a lot of shit on the moon, and they don't talk about this fundamental issue with the formation of the moon. It's so obvious to me. Like, it's so crazy that it's not talked about. But what I was going to show is that through Fecunditatis, right? Fecunditatis, you'll see this amazing shape right here. Look at that. And that. And right there is your infinity sign again. And this is your shells, your inertial plane, and your Fibonacci spirals, your golden spirals that you can only see from the top down, and the pinched hypertrochoid, the tube, Birkeland filament. See, it's a little bit tougher, but up here, down here it's tough, but let's move up a little bit. I mean, people will ask, like, can impacts create these features? Well, maybe, right? Like, I don't know for sure, but for me, it's much more that that there's a computer rendering. There's nothing wrong with computer renders, but there's a computer rendering on NASA JPL that shows the formation of the moon. This is the one popular piece of video that talks about this one massive piece of information in this life, like how is the moon formed? And this one video on the NASA JPL YouTube channel shows this animation of how through periods of heavy bombardment, all the features that we see on the moon were created. It is just one of those things where you have to look at the moon, look at this animation, and then look at the moon again, and then look at the animation and see if it makes sense to you. Because to me, when I look at it, I've looked at it countless times, it makes no sense when you actually see Mare Crisium and it looks like a hexagon. But then not just does it look like a hexagon, but then right at the point, at one of the vertices, you have a perfect asteroid star emanating, and then a boundary layer that creates this shape again. This is the bridge of the nose. This is the inertial plane. What happens when there are nostrils? Whoops, that's not where nostrils go, but nostrils go here. Nostrils are the same thing, just smaller, compressed, pinch. And this one is stretched, rarefaction. And then above it is pinched again. So right under, so you have the nose, the nostrils are like the eye, where the eyes would be. And then underneath that, you have a little, what is this? Parallel, not a parallelogram, but a trapezoid, right? A trapezoid. And then the mouth. The mouth is a type of structure. What's crazy about the mouth, the lip, the top of the lips, is this funny shape of that you see. Hold on. This looks like a caricature head, but what's so interesting about the little triangle between the on top of the upper lip is that it's a lot like this. It's a lot like the bottom of Tranquillitatis, where you're trying to make a hex, but it goes up like that. So fascinating. Anyway, just and I know that the connection's buffering a little bit. All right, I'm going to take another quick little break because it's getting pretty rowdy. All good. Don't want to rain on anybody's parade here, but talking more about this, I'll rest my voice for a couple of minutes and play some songs, get myself a drink. But it's so fascinating. If you imagine, look at yourself in the mirror and you'll see these hexagons on the bridge of your nose, and then you'll see the hexagons above your mouth, and you'll see that it's toruses stacked. Big torus, small torus, big torus, small torus, head, neck, shoulders, chest, waist. This is the rarefaction compression along the Birkeland filament. This is how human bodies are formed, and all bodies are formed. Yo, what's up, Cat Dan? All right, tune time for a second, and then I'll be back in a few. Can barely focus, honestly, especially talking about this stuff. That's why I probably am going like a train. All right. What about Dreamboat? I like this song. Got to keep us energized.
Trouble. Could you really
beating from the heart, I know, no lie. I've been thinking about you all night. Why? No why. I've been waiting for your white light, light. No why. Oh, I've been thinking that you should be mine. So call me up, 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 and let's get down, 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 down. So call me up, 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 and let's get down, 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 down. Oh, you send me messages across the cosmic network, and you send me pictures from across the astral plane, and you send me cryptic kisses across the matching network. So call me up, 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 and let's get down, 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 down. So call me up, 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 and let's get down, 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 down. Je t'attends, mon amour, grâce à tu es assis la même que la même semaine, achetant la éternelle avec on son billet. Je suis la même que ton avant l'année chaque jour. Je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans agrévé. Et c'est mon âme magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique. Cool running, no way. conditions that we bleed through. Every fear, your open wide soul modulation. You just come feel this ride so high, your love I'm craving. But I can't see it till you. All right, Spacelings, what's up? What's up? So I know there's a little bit of buffering going on, but I want to hop in and say what's up to everybody joining and chilling. Much high vibration tonight. I love it. I'm so appreciative of everyone, but I'm having a tough time thinking straight with all the background noise. Hopefully it's winding down soon. But I just want to jump in here, say hi to Richard Garcia. Good to see you. Welcome. I see Mr. Miner. What's happening? Red Rum, how you doing, brother? I will try and stream this week, like I said. And everybody else hanging out. Let me know if I missed you. NGC, nice to see you. That's who I want to say hi to. Great, great, great. Those were a few songs. That's a little buffering, but here I wanted to zoom into a very interesting feature, Rima Hyginus, dental hygienist. But this kind of blister slash, you could call it. Okay, so I'm trying to think about how to explain this properly, but this particular feature that we're seeing here is one of these things that stands out on the moon. They've mentioned it on Thunderbolts Project, but this feature is really very indescribable using commonplace understanding like impact theory or simple lunar surface or basically what is it? I'm looking for this term, almost like a landslide of sorts. But in the electric universe cosmology, this is almost like a little circuit, right? So this falls in line with the geometry that I've been showing, and it also is called a sinuous rill, RILLE, and sinuous like sinewy, like making almost like a river shape. I'm having to a little hard time making sentences right now because every other word is coming into my headphones, but bear with me, thanks. Let's zoom in here one more time. I want to draw over this, but as well you can see on the left are almost the same sort of Lichtenberg or electric dendritic lines carved into the surface of the moon. Now, there are a lot of different explanations. You could say that the Earth, that the soil, right, the lunar soil, was wet or molten, and then it hardened, and then it cracked, right, and created these cracks that we see right there. Either way, these cracks look like dendritic Lichtenberg lines, right? Lines that have been formed by the process of elimination, a path of least resistance to some degree, right? So that's how a dendrite is formed. That's how these roots almost look. Basically, they just move on a trajectory. The oscillation moves, it vibrates, and then it reaches a place in a plasma shell that it needs to traverse through, and it'll take a number of different things, right? So some people don't take, they call it the path of least resistance, but a lot of people take the path of resistance. This is the necessitative relational quality of the universe where everything takes its path and therefore creates the whole. But in any case, talking about this particular feature, this is a sinuous rill that's very specific, right? Around it is this geometric shape that I've drawn. But in and of itself, right, it is the pinch, and it's got an inertial plane. What happens on the inertial plane? The inertial plane is like words on a page. The reason you see this raised landslide or sinuous rill or whatever you may want to think it is, the reason we see it and it looks like this is because there's this geometry. It's geometry this way, like the apple core. But there's also geometry this way, right? It's three-dimensional. This torus is like a donut, and the hourglass, or the hypertrochoid, or the pinch of the tube, right? It's three-dimensional. So this is why these shapes form. And then further, you have what is definitely geometric right here next to it. Similar reason, right? What are you going to start finding? You're going to start finding boundary layers, and then boundary layers. The angles will always find each other. And then what happens here? This is why honeycombs. This is why molecules. This is why language. Really simply, this is why all these things. It's a fundamental structural geometry where all things follow these field lines and adhere to these mechanics, ultimately in some fashion. And therefore, that's how we see things, and that's how we relate things. All right. So I also wanted to show what's also so funny, right? If you want to take it right into pareidolia, we could draw a profile on this image right here. Right? This looks like a character with and all things fall into place because they are the same thing. That's the nose, and the mouth, and the chin, and the eye, and the eyebrow, the head, and the neck. Clickety clack. All right, let's keep moving through some more areas here. You can see, so not only are these sinuous rills very interesting, but there's no common explanation for them. It's either volcanic lava tubes, right, which these, if you can see, even the ones underneath as we go down right here, how are these volcanic lava tubes? I mean, this is what, hundreds of kilometers crossing over and kind of like imprinting. So electric universe plasma theory is that electric arcing moves across the surface, carving this, elevating it, like those videos, Billy Elverton, ElectroTerravision, my dude over at Electric Universe Eyes, a couple of other people, all doing it, showing how you can create these features using electric arcing. And then let's look at some more hexagons as they appear. I mean, theoretically, not theoretically, but in actuality, you can see these shapes everywhere. You can see, I don't know why my yellow cursor is not showing up tonight, otherwise I'd be just talking shit. All right, stay right there. So this thing right here, you can see this is, again, 2 hexagons. That's where the eyes would be. That's where nose would be. And then you get to another pentagon there. All these shapes look like faces because faces are built along this geometry. You sick of me saying it yet? Hexagon or octagon right there. And then look up bees or honeycomb, right? Why honeycomb? Like just generally big picture. Bees sniff out magnetism, right? That's the answer. But what does that even mean? They don't sniff out anything. They are actually building in the most optimal shape imaginable, right? The most optimal shape is a hexagon because, or pentagon, or heptagon, or octagon. Why? Let's figure it out. Because at some point, you get to this shape. And this shape is because it's being impinged upon by things around it. This is the coherence and interrelatability of all things. It starts off circular, emanates out, emanates out, emanates out, eventually forms a boundary layer with what's next to it. What's next to it also forms a boundary layer, therefore creating in parallel these geometric forms. That's the simple answer. And at the center is the remnant discharge right here. Why does it look pyramidal? Is because it follows the same structure as the Birkeland filament. It's twisted. And so you get a tetrahedron. And then what do you have? Even more nested hexagons. Nested hexagon. And then what do you have here? A chain following a spiral. Right? This is not a series of meteorite hits. Really? That doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes a lot more sense if you have an electric arc moving, like sputtering, creating an actual beginning of a spiral. But if it's meteorites, it's meteorites. It doesn't matter because ultimately the shape is more what matters, right? So even if popular science fundamentals are correct, the larger perspective on how they're interconnected is incorrect. Yo, what's up? See many crows. What's up? Just K today. Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions on what I'm talking about. Mary says, maybe circular shapes are really how do you say sided? So many sides, they are not visible to the naked eye. That's exactly true. That's exactly true. Circles are at some point like 48, 60-sided circles. You no longer see straight edges. You see only a curve, right? And then you get, if you reduce the number of vertices or number of edges on a circle under 24, and I'm talking about like, like in Adobe or like in a 3D program, you'll see that a circle starts to lose circular definition under a number of sides. But what's happening here is that naturally you're getting bubbling lunar soil and it's creating a sphere or a circle. It's emanating outwards and it meets another circle and then it creates this boundary layer in between the two. But what's so interesting is that the structure is recursive and fractal throughout the whole thing. Right? The whole thing, you can always draw that shape. Again, even if it's very crude, right? You're still getting the spiraling Birkeland filament, the plane of inertia, the layers of plasma information, the Z-pinch, the gradation between the plasma layers. You're getting all the gray matter or dark energy. You're getting all the matter on the inertial plane being impinged upon. You're getting the connectivity with the Birkeland filament. You're getting consciousness with the oscillation vibration. You're getting the flow of electricity along these magnetic field lines that look like a donut and that look like an hourglass. It's throughout, at every scale. This is the Brahman. This is the hand of God. This one this one concept, this one geometry, and the understanding of the oscillation of the core with the shells gives you understanding of all religious texts at once. It gives you understanding of all alien stories at once. It gives you understanding of the self at once. It gives you the understanding of time and space and the fabric of time. Relativity is answered. Quantum mechanics is answered. Consciousness interrelatability is answered. Telepathy is answered. All in one fell swoop. And people don't want to believe that, but that's really what happens. Or at least if you accept that this is the case. For me, it makes absolute perfect sense. Day to day, I use the same tool, and you realize that it absolutely works on every level, from consciousness, from culture, from ideas, from emotions, to everything around us. Operates in exactly this way. It even answers death to some degree. I know that's a very bold claim. But ask me how. Ask me how. All right, y'all. So Nexstar finally calmed down so I can really focus here. I know my volume is still a bit low, but I'm trying to get through. Like I said, I don't really have a monitor, and I was just trying to get some clear sounds tonight, but let me know if talking right here is okay. I really don't want to break my voice, but let me know if this is all better. Whoops, at all better. So how does this talk about death, right? So there are two things or three things about death that are so interesting. I think a big part of it is what I was talking about earlier as to like how the human body is grown or grows, or how eyeballs are formed, or how your arms are formed, or how your hair grows, or your birth, and thereby your death. But your birth, ultimately, in the beginning, you did this, right? It's the self that brings yourself into this world. And the reason I say that is because you're following a set of principles whereby we end up in this life, or even, that type of language where I'm saying we end up here, almost removes the self from the act of living. But if you reinsert the self in terms of right now, you are doing everything that your body is doing. You'll put yourself to sleep. You're going to eat something that might make you sick. You're going to interact with somebody. You're gonna get sick, not get sick, live your life, not live your life. All these things we think about, or at least the common understanding is such that that it's happening to us. Somebody's doing this to me, or it's happening and I don't have control. Poor me. And I want to grant everybody feeling that way, because I definitely have felt that way. I still feel that way sometimes. But much more so now, I feel like I've done all this. I have brought myself here. I have grown my own body. I will ultimately kill myself, not suicidally, but waste my own body away. And when I die, I will probably be in control of that too. So this is more of a maybe philosophical, theosophical, metaphysical way of imagining death being part of your control system as opposed to completely out of your control. That's a big part of death, right? It's out of our control. It's going to happen to all of us, so better prepare for it. Versus I've probably factored in death as a means to pay for life. So what does that mean? That means that in everything that we see, there's this rarefaction and compression. There's the head, the neck, the chest, right? Rarefaction, compression, rarefaction. The pinch, the Z pinch, right? The hourglass shape. This is a tube that's pinched. This shape is so consistent throughout the reality that we understand that life itself must be one of these rarefactions or compressions. That's what's so fascinating. And we might even be seeing that in actuality with our solar system, because if you believe in electric universe cosmology in terms of the polar alignment and Velikovsky and David Talbot's work, and you imagine that planets were aligned at one point, and now we have a wide spiral. So along the spiral, our galaxy is expanding, or has expanded to this point, and then it will ultimately compress, and then it will expand again. If any of you follow the stock market, it does the same sort of thing, this 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. This is the motion, or the perceived motion, of the expansion of the wavefront using the method I mentioned earlier, this oscillation. As things oscillate and gain more traction, the next layer of plasma that they push outwards starts to push out the other layers, and this kind of cascade of plasma layers expanding from the main oscillation is what I think consciousness actually is. What we think is the bicameral mind is the mind both perceiving this next plasma layer and consciousness creating this additive effect of the consciousness perceiving the plasma layer. And it happens in one motion. It's both think act. It's not think or act. It's both at the same time. And this is how I'm talking, but my body is doing all these other things like growing hair and breathing and all, and I'm not thinking about how that happens. I'm just letting it happen, right? But it's still me. It's still my body. I'm hammering this home because it's pretty specific And if you think about this type of self-engagement and you realize that you're doing all of this, each and every one of us is doing all of this. And the reason it's not your own thing alone is because each of us has a version of this that we create, but along the same geometry that exists throughout everything we see. How it relates to death is that along this rarefaction and compression, death and life must be, to me, one or two, a wave front and a life and a death, a life and a death, a life and a death. And if we were able to birth ourselves, to born ourselves using this geometry, it also implies that we're able to do it again. It more so implies that we're able to do it again. By simply existing, there's more of a chance that we'll exist again than there is less of a chance that we won't, and death is the end. So the first one is you control your own body and you do your thing. Second is the rarefaction and compression of the wavefront almost implies a life and a death cycle. Patterns move in trajectories. Therefore, the next life could be different, or the next life could be fractalized, where think about bubbles in a sink. Not every bubble expands to the same place or pops to the same place, right? What is that experience like? Is it painful? Maybe it's very painful, but then ultimately at the end of pain is pleasure. So what if death is the most painful, but then followed by the most ecstatic moment you've ever had, which almost falls into the out of body, near death, all the stories that you hear about this white light. The white light sounds like a Birkeland filament, right? What if our awareness just becomes diffuse? What happens to a bubble? The bubble expands into tiny particulate and then re-merges with all these other bubbles. So it begs the question, is death a similar process where the human bubble, the body, the sac that we think that we exist within, in fact just becomes diffuse and re-merges with the etheric plasma around it? Now, do you retain self-consciousness as this individual oscillation? Perhaps not. Perhaps this is why every life that we go into, we don't remember the previous life fully, because of this diffuseness of the point of consciousness at which humans exist. However, it does beg the question, like when you see a bubble in a sink, that bubble is in the structure of the whole universe. When that bubble pops, you're very certain that another bubble is going to come in and replace it or be there next time. Therefore, it absolutely kind of alludes to the fact that there will be several or infinite number of lives to occur. Whether you experience them as the current self oscillation is kind of up for debate, but it's interesting because you can apply physics to this now, and you could probably do an experiment in a laboratory and see where all the particulate from that initial bubble actually goes. And you could see that if there's a fractal element of that bubble that retains the version of the original self, then maybe each of us is a tiny particulate re-emergent on future versions of selves. I know that sounded convoluted, but basically parts of us end up seeding future parts of us, future people. So 3 ways in which Electric Universe and this geometry can start talking about death in a less hokey way, in a less conspiratorial way, in a more empowered and understanding and physical manifested reality way. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat room. I'm taking away free will with this mindset. Well, the free will is actually in play right now, right? Instead of me accepting the main theory, I'm taking an alternative route, and that in and of itself denotates free will. Or not. But if it doesn't, the illusion is just as powerful. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but a lot of people say things like artificial. Things are artificial. Artificial intelligence. Or plastic. It's unnatural, right? But ultimately, it doesn't remove plastic. and it doesn't make computer intelligence any less intelligent by adding the word artificial to it. Or pseudoscience, right? Just because somebody adds the word pseudoscience, then there's this feeling that you can't take it seriously. But that's ridiculous. It's just a very limited way of thinking, because adding adding a word to a phrase can take you down a rabbit hole, but it doesn't. But if your foundations are strong, then you can just read that word and understand it for what it's trying to imply. And pseudoscience is a particularly divisive word that's used to make people question things as opposed to figure things out. Yeah, I think we're very complex bubbles, right? I think our whole existence is layers and layers and layers of thin plasma bubbles. And it's not as simple as like we pop and just the soul disappears. I'm talking about very dense plasma in the ether around your body right now stores information about your life, like a hard disk, or like information in the cloud, right? But around a body is a cloud, like a nucleus of an atom has a cloud of electrons or a cloud of probability. This electric discharge is how we store information, how our bodies look, our culture, our personality is stored in these thin plasma layers. The head or the entire chakra system resonates with these plasma layers, therefore sympathetically resounding with certain ideas. And that's how we have personality. It doesn't take away free will, really. It says that there is structure, and then there are also manifestations within the structure and without the structure. Yeah, fake news is usually uttered by people who are the arbiters of fake news. And then people who try and debunk fake news spend the time debunking instead of looking for new things. And then popular channels spend time making thumbnails instead of actually studying science or using a telescope. Is that harsh? I don't think so. Let's see what's going on. Anything else in the chat? Am I argumentative, or are you talking to Mr. Miner? I like to debate as much as possible. Zap, what's going on? I don't come here often, but I love how everyone is so chill and talking about random stuff. Cool, man. Welcome. Let's see. You look like a donut, esoteric gold. Okay. See many crows, yo-yo. I don't know why that was blocked. That's weird. Golden Bear says, have you ever seen stars behind where the moon should be? So this is part of that deep conspiracy hole on YouTube. Never once have I ever seen a star through the moon. Never once. And I've never seen a planet or a comet through. Never once. And I have footage of the moon during the eclipse from here in Florida, and you can definitely see the outline of the moon. You cannot see through the moon. No way, no how. No way, no how. Take it or leave it. No way, no how. I know I've seen all the videos. I've heard all the stuff. Just, it's never happened. Over 700 videos. Look at all of them. You'll never see a star through the moon. Ever, 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 never, ever. That's the last I'll say about that. Conscious plasma, right? So it's not just the plasma that's conscious. It's the oscillation and the plasma together that form what we consider this consciousness as a whole, the totality of it. It's the both think act, and that's how things can exist, and that's how the concept of coexisting is actually truly the noble, what seems like the noble cause, right? Not changing people to your beliefs, but allowing everyone to play their role. and not just accepting that. You know how instead of, because tolerance is preached, and tolerance is one way to look at it. However, if you look at it as necessitative, as if you need the hate and for the love, it's the payment, right? It's like having a life where you can taste delicious food means you can also burn your tongue, and you can touch somebody's skin, and you can also cut your fingers so easily. And in a way, this idea, and I'm not saying that anybody here feels this way, but there's this notion where you can have life without pain, or, oh, damn you, pain, I don't want you here. But for me, I've started to look more at it and I'm welcoming of pain, because it's necessary. It's the payment for this life, right? So it's like you don't go into a shop and expect to just walk out with goods without paying for it. Why would you expect to go through life and not pay for it with death? So your very existence is tied to your death. It's not, it will end all things. It's the payment for all things. And why wouldn't you want that? Would you rather never have existed? Some people would say that. But I mean, ultimately, you have that choice. Everybody can do whatever they want. But ultimately, if we're having a conversation, or you're hearing me right now, we're in some form of this rarefaction or compression of consciousness where this is either death or life, but one form of it precedes the other or supersedes the other right now, because by the virtue of actually existing, right? Right now, look at your hand. It's there. You can say it's unnatural. You can say it's artificial. And this is this cool bridge that I've always wanted to talk about. I've mentioned many times, but let's talk about like how the Matrix or the Truman Show fucks with people's heads, right? This is all fake. It's all artificial. NASA's fake. Space is fake, right? How does that make one really feel? It makes you feel isolated. It makes you feel attacked. It makes you feel all these, and it definitely is cathartic. It is. There is a fuck it all mentality, and that to some degree is catharsis. However, I would say that 80% of it is more so feeling attacked, feeling disempowered, etc., down that litany of things that take away from the self. Whereas if you just look at it as if governments are corrupt because corruption exists, the flip side of it is that the human race is doing awfully well. If you believe the population numbers, even if you don't believe population numbers, let's say it's more people, let's say it's less people, doesn't matter. It seems like the human race is doing better than it ever has, just by numbers, just by surviving, if that's the baseline. It might not be your baseline. Legacy might be your baseline. And even if you take the words baseline, right? It's music, it's a thread, it's a Birkeland filament, it's your baseline. You're bringing information from the root filament. All words recursively, fractally mean what we live in. It's not coincidental. Coincidence is only to those who are not aware. Those who are aware expect it. So in a lot of ways, what I was talking about in terms of just conspiracies and like the Truman Show or the Matrix, right? I felt the same way. You take away from it the fact that you don't have power. You're not like the agents. You're not even like Neo, right? You're even jealous of Neo to some degree. You're like, oh, I want to be Neo. You play act as Neo, but it's really, you're like, oh, it's still like Keanu Reeves and still Neo, and it's like not really me, but I love watching it. I'm really inspired because I want to break free from the system and Rage Against the Machine, etc. Or Truman Show, you're rooting for Jim Carrey. You're like, get out of here, and you don't want not Woody Harrelson, but the Man in Black to like control your life anymore. But you realize then the people in the Truman Show are prisoners. They can never leave. It's like Hotel California, and And the man in black is also a prisoner. He's tied to making this show. He can't not make the Truman Show. He's just as trapped as, in fact, Truman, in a way, you could argue, is better off than all these people because they're watching out for him this whole time. And he doesn't really have to do anything. So you could read The Matrix and the Truman Show as anything you really want. But think about like how deeply affected people are by these stories, how this idea of a moon projection is more compelling than looking into hexagons on the moon that are right there. It's more compelling to look at the moon, think, oh, there's some high-level technology that actually projects a version of a fake moon, and I'm being tricked, and that's the real story. And then they stop. They don't stop and then they try and then that message gets evangelized through YouTube. This is one example. What I'm trying to say is that, okay, that is some interesting line of thinking, but what's more logical? That there's a projected moon that you can't prove, or a hexagon that you can prove by looking at it? And think about how many people would rather listen to somebody, like millions of people, probably 30% of them are bots, but millions of people will watch these big channels on YouTube and listen to absolutely non-augmented science that's been around for hundreds of years, primitive dark age science, and laud it and defend it and idolize it, versus thinking, oh, I get nothing out of this type of science. What do you really get out of listening to... I was listening, what happened recently, some sort of, the SpaceX thing was interesting. And satellite, I saw actually the Starlink satellite system, and that's really annoying. It was so bright. But point that I want to make is that if you look at space news right now, you realize that it really has nothing in there for you besides you watching celebrities spend a lot of money. There's really very little understanding as to how the rockets work, why we're still using rockets, how the anti-gravitic systems have been tested, what's the purpose ultimately of the International Space Station. If you look at the articles about the ISS, right, they're always about growing plants in space, seeing how humans can colonize space, etc. But how long do you have to do that before you actually learn from the ISS, right, until you can actually put it into action? It seems like in this one aspect of our lives, besides, obviously, it's not this one aspect, besides the military-industrial complex and a number of other deep state things, it's just space seems so dark age right now publicly. And yet people really want to believe it. They want to believe that they're weak. They want to believe that they're strewn, they're flung out to the orphaned, the Goldilocks zone. They want to believe that aliens made us. And I'm talking, if I don't mean to be inflammatory to anyone in this chat room, right? So if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to agree with me, and I don't mean to be insulting if these are your beliefs. But for me, none of these beliefs help you discover anything new. It helps you negate many things that exist now, but it doesn't help you replace them. And this is why fundamentally these hexagons, electric universe, Lichtenberg patterns, the human consciousness outside the human body, layers of plasma, integrating Rupert Sheldrake's work with Eileen McCusick. Why should they stay separate? Why, if not us? I'm doing it right here. But people who watch Eileen McCusick's channel don't know about Rupert Sheldrake. She says it. But really, it doesn't need to be, oh, maybe it's like this. Oh, maybe things are like this, because we've already, it's already there. And I think there's a huge part of this whole kind of thing that irritates me. Sometimes it's why I take such long breaks from YouTube, is because of this lack of augmentation of information. People are not willing to make the conclusion. I mean, even people with an electric universe are so cagey about the fact that this is exactly how things look, this is how things operate, and then next up, then we start talking about this original oscillation, how things move, etc. But if we constantly, or I see that it's going to constantly go in this wheel, because I'm not right now, I'm breaking the mold and saying, okay, go watch Ken Wheeler and ignore all his quirks and listen to what he's talking about. Mix that with Eric Dollard. Mix that with Halton Arp. Mix that with Rupert Sheldrake. Mix it with Eileen McCusick. Mix it with Jerry Tennant. Watch it a bunch of times. You'll see this is where it's all going. These people are smart. They care. They've studied it. This is where information resides now. It's fractalized. It's forbidden. You know, Nephilim is not forbidden knowledge. Nephilim is Nibiru, Nephilim, aliens. These are stories that detract right now from the fundamental, simple understanding of conjugate geometry, Eric Dollard's work, Ken Wheeler's work, Tesla's work. I know how repetitive I sound, but this is fundamentally, truly what it's all about. The big conspiracy, again, is no one talks about this relationship. It's not all the other shit that they're talking about. Even Sky Scholar, who I love, Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille, who answered that silly channel today. Who cares? And honestly, his fundamental understanding of the sun, cosmic microwave background radiation, all these things, so much more important than responding to another YouTuber. But he's compelled to do it because of this insane drive to change people. When in fact, you don't need to change anyone at all. You just need to do what you do and you'll get your audience. And that's why people will follow 2-Minute Physics and Veritasium and so on, and they'll love them. And there will be millions of people who love them and think they're 100% right and everything they say is correct. However, they are the fast food chains, which are tasty, but ultimately not as good as Mama's Cookin' or that cool restaurant manned by like an amazing chef. It's just never gonna be the same as the really high quality intelligence understanding of the universe that you can find is right in front of us. Did I go off on a tangent here? Just a little bit, and it's definitely elitist, but I have no problem sounding elitist because elite just means good, and people are so afraid of being called things that, you know, they're too afraid of being called elite or so this information is elite. All right, that's a little bit about conspiracies. You guys, let's see, Michelson-Morley experiment. Again, think about it. Like, what does flat Earth do? It's trying to find the shape of the Earth. Okay, and then what are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? Like, flat Earth doesn't have a continuity thread. It has a limiting thread. It's like the powers that be, the structure that fights you, will never have disclosure. It will never happen. And the reason it won't happen is because you specifically don't want it to happen. Why don't you want it to happen? Because it's not the answer. It's obvious that governments lie and are corrupt. This idea that they shouldn't be is delusional, right? But the mystery is already right in front of you, right here on YouTube, right now. I'm telling you straight up what this answer is. You can take it or leave it, right? Like this is what it is. It's perception. It's not the actual truth. It's just saying, okay, the truth doesn't have to be what's popular. The truth is actually likely what's very unpopular. And just because I don't see hope in it getting popular doesn't make it any less truthful. Rasaman Liv says, pretty sure the elites know this info. It's very likely. It's very likely. Mama's Cookin', way better than fast food. Way better. And nobody knows about Mama's Cookin', right? Who is it? It's the family, some friends, right? Generational, tiny fraction of people. But your Mama's Cookin' is like way better than anything you'll have at Taco Bell. Am I right? I mean, like, I don't know. Some might argue with me, but definitely for me. Let's see. Rasamelu says, but don't want to obey Yahweh, right? That is why they worship Lucifer and believe the whole of the law shall be do as thou wilt. But I could unpack all of that, but I'm not sure what it's implying, right? Does it imply that there's a force that is greater than us, than you? It doesn't mean that more powerful. I mean greater, like metaphysically, inherently, structurally greater than you. Are there more evil people? Yes. Are there good people? Yes. Do people kill one another? Yes. But killing, again, is part of this relational quality. What I'm trying to say about Luciferian worship, not that I'm a pro or against, I think I'm having deja vu, because like 3 years ago, I think I said, definitely want to clarify, not condoning Luciferian worship. But if you really break it down, Lucifer, Lucy, light, it's just enlightenment. It's just a group of people that thought everyone else was stupid. I mean, it's a way of writing off a group of people now that kill and are greedy, but it also means, it doesn't mean that everybody who's smart is also greedy and wants to hurt people. There, again, like implications of popularity means good, but it's not true. Popular is just popular. It could be good, it could be bad, likely bad. And small groups of people are highly evil and villainous. Does it make everybody that? No, in fact, there are so few of them because the majority of humanity is actually quite relaxed and good and just wants to live. All right, need to take a little break here. Stretch. Thanks all for hanging out. We got our moon for a little bit longer here. What am I running on? 2:45, 10:30, all the numbers. Let's play some tunes. The right song coming up. Yo, yo, what's happening, everybody? What's happening, Ryan? What's happening, Donald? Shout outs to all of you. Thanks for hanging out for so long. Listen to me ramble and talk about all this crazy shit. Crazy in a good way. All right, what do we got? A good channel is Greg J. Hell yeah. Love that. He does a lot of super interesting work. You see a letter P in the lower dark. Well, think about it. A P is a line and then a curve, and that curve is also kind of made up of little lines, like I was saying earlier. So all letters are really these same shapes that can be formed from the torus and the hypertorcoid. Hoo-wee, feeling good. Moon's looking amazing. I'll go for a little bit longer, but I think I've said what I have to say tonight. I don't know if is there anything else that I missed or any questions y'all have or thoughts. I'm happy to talk a little bit more. Or we can just listen to music and tour the moon for a bit longer. 10:43 on the East Coast. Just amazing that we even have a moon. We can see it. Think about all this time spent proving shit to people and debunking things and not debunking things and selling advertisement, and we have a damn moon. We have like a crazy, unbelievable object that we can see and that we can relate to and that is alive. And that to me is so much more important than all these conspiracies in a way. Even though the main conspiracy is that people aren't as impressed with the moon as they should be. That's the big conspiracy. Hey, thanks, Dr. Ayat Hassan Kamel. I appreciate that. Thanks, Rastaman. Thanks, Donald. Oh, gravity in the electric universe model. So, as far as I understand it, gravity operates is a manifestation of electrical interaction between these layers. So two points and two large objects. Actually, let me just draw that. Mutual mass acceleration, if I'm to quote Ken Wheeler. But in the simplest terms, it just means that every oscillation center point creates a version of attraction. And attraction and repulsion. The coaxial circuit of the Birkeland filament and the interaction between the oscillation and the plasma layers creates an ongoing dance between these two states. All right, so the two states are constantly ebbing and flowing. There's not one answer to what gravity is. However, gravity, in terms of how to visualize it, is that the moon is exerting an attractive force towards its oscillation along the inertial plane, and it creates these kind of layers, right, of information. And then what's coming next to the moon, let's say the Earth, has its layers interacting with the moon layers, and it's exerting an attractive force to its center, right? And what happens is it creates a point here between the two centers of gravity or center of mass. And both of these become attracted to this shared point, mutual mass acceleration. So it's a really interesting dance. I think I explained it correctly, but like it doesn't make immediate sense, but because of the movement of the Birkeland filaments, I think, the coaxial circuit, you have the oscillation between the layers. The layers are both pushing, and there's active repulsion and attraction. but different levels of that, and depending on the layer of plasma, that's how much attraction or repulsion there is, among other things like discharge layers, density, and so it gets a little bit more complicated as to what's pulling and pushing, but really, so humans are basically pulling on Earth or the moon, and the moon is pulling things to it, and then it creates this point, and then they push towards this point. So I know it's convoluted, but that's how things can stay together but also apart. Is how honeycomb forms attraction and repulsion simultaneously in a frequency resonance. If you see Chladni patterns or cymatic patterns, you'll see that it's boundary layers, right? It's interlocked, interwoven, frequency-based patterns, and these are due to the fact that at every different resonance, there's a different interaction. So I feel like, let's see, maybe I explained that like completely wrong, but I'm almost certain there is that point between two objects, and then both objects start pulling towards that invisible point. Ken Wheeler, the Oreoapophysis, showed this with the I want to say the HoloLens, but not the HoloLens, the the ferrocell. If you look at the ferrocell, you'll see two magnets approach each other. They create a null point, and then they're both attracted to the null point, or what we think as being pulled towards this null point, this counter space sink. But at the same time, they're both pulling away because they're retaining their shape as magnets. Does that make sense? So if they were only being pulled to this null zone, then they would completely dissolve. But because they have their own internal implicit attractive force, they create a repulsive force in the immediate layer. And then as the layers get more and more diffuse, then they can lock. This is what tidal locking is. I know it's complicated the way I explained it, but I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to verbalize it. But I think Ken Wheeler does an amazing job without me, and mutual mass acceleration makes a lot more sense than just gravity is 9.82 meters per second squared. It's less gravity on the moon, and that's it. That's the extent of people's or gravity doesn't exist, it's fake. Those three explanations are not explanations. They're just emotional reactions to this fundamental phenomena. And gravity as a phenomena is something that operates with this null point, so mutual mass acceleration, because we've seen it in a homebrew experiment. All right. So think about it. Conspiracies saying gravity doesn't exist and not replacing it with something else makes no sense. That's not a tool. That becomes just a negation. Mary Quite says, my MacBook has a screen that looks like the moon's craters with a pillar of rock in the center and wide space of land surrounding it. Do I know where that might be? With a pillar of rock in it. I mean, that could be Tycho. It could be Theophilus. I mean, we have access to Theophilus tonight. Let's zoom in and see if it's Theophilus, but I don't think it is. It could be Tycho, and it could be Copernicus. Could also be Plato. All right, tunes and some zooms. Tunes and zooms. All right. Just riding here. Want to say what's up to everybody joining, hanging out still. Gonna just go as long as I am awake here. Not even tired, so not like you needed that information, but loving the shot of the moon. I think another 15, 20 maybe. That's what I got left, because I'm getting hungry too. Got to go make some late night snacks here. This is the first 3-hour stream in a while, but love it. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out so late and so long. Let's get back to the tunes here. Those were a bunch of them. Repose, Feel For You, and I know I got Syncopated Television coming up as well once I get to it naturally. Let's do this one. I haven't played this one in a while. Why is it not playing? So annoying. All right, let me find something else. How's everybody feeling? Donald says, you should feel confident that your communication about your collection of information does get through by your clear passion for reality. I love that. Thank you. I definitely feel like I'm getting a grasp on it. I can just kind of free flow talk about it now without feeling like that, without feeling like I'm kind of making up things, right? I can just look at it. I can draw conclusions. I can see my hand. I can see the moon. I can see geology. These are the things that make sense to me. And if optics overall are a hoax, then so be it. But in terms of what we can see, it's really clear, right? I mean, at least for me, it seems very clear now as to like, why does Mare Crisium look like a crab, for example? It looks like a crab because a crab is actually shaped by the same means that this crater was, or this mare was formed. I love that answer. Thank you. All right, back to the tunes here. Because I probably will try and stream again tomorrow as long as the weather is nice. Definitely want to capture as much Jupiter and Saturn before January when they're really too low. This one's called Grown to Like You, and it's a moody piece, but lots of good guitar in it.
twilight are gone. Your welfare's and just with like fools, just with cool chicks. Their minds separated television from lips. Something out there, wild separation, sin wild, sleeping down, right? Get the walls, it's a big television. Get the wall, it's a fun. Get it, good, get it, good, get it, good, get it. Take the islands, the night is on, find its way until the hot dogs done. It's fine, favorite wine, enjoy the time until the twilights are gone. You're well, said you're well, said fight. There's just red love, the cool chicks. And I'm on it, like everyone say, yes. I'm feeling real wild, till well, said why, real why, still well, it's days. Bye, 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 bye. We're coming over to you. Oh, we go, 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 go into the end of your days. The end of your days. The end of your days. To the end of your days.
All right, everybody, that's it for me. That's it for our moon tonight, and that's it for all the ramblings, and I think got my point across pretty clearly tonight. I probably drilled it in a little bit hard, but I hope everybody enjoyed the chat and the questions, and next time please bring some more questions, more comments, and more great vibes. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Try and catch you all tomorrow or the day after, certainly for this coming up full moon, and finally have a little bit of time leading up till next month's conjunction, which I will definitely try and stream. So stay kind, stay wise, stay brave, and I will catch you soon on the next ride. Peace.